We're excited to have you here. Welcome to this program of the University of Arkansas Small Business Technology and Development Center. We are so pleased to be able to bring you these educational programs to help support small businesses. Please be advised that we will be recording this conversation for ASB/TDC education purposes and so that you can keep it forever and have it later. You will be able to access these recordings all over and plus all of our past workshops and webinars at our website, and we will be posting a link in the chat where you can find that. I will introduce our panel momentarily, but first I'd like to introduce us and tell you a little bit about ASB/TDC. I'm Amy Robinson. I'm a specialty consultant with the Small Business Center. And if you don't know about the Small Business Center, it is a one-stop shop for startups and existing small businesses. We are associated with the University of Arkansas and affiliated with the SBA and statewide ASB/TDC, as well as a national network of more than 1,000 small business centers, which basically means go to any city and you will probably find an SB/TDC there. I would also like to introduce Chris Case. She is co-hosting with me today, also a specialty consultant and colleague. Locally, we offer complimentary one-on-one consulting programs, consulting and programs like this one covering relevant topics for business owners. And if you're not already a client, we encourage you to visit us at sbtdc.uark.edu. Again, after this presentation, you will find this and other programs, recordings, tools that help offer you support, and we are going to be posting those in the link here momentarily. I'm going to turn it over to Chris to tell you a little bit about how the panel is going to work today and how you can ask questions, and go for it. Chris, how's it going?
Great. All the good stuff I'm going to tell you about. So yes. Today we're hosting this panel as part of one of the top business challenges that we are hearing a lot of from our clients. We love this format because it gives you an opportunity to talk with our community businesses and our experts, ask questions, get to know them better, and possibly work through whatever challenges and successes that we are all having with our small businesses in today's world. Now, this is an interactive hour, so we encourage you to ask questions as we go along. Please keep yourself on mute until you have a question or a comment, and then please feel free to unmute and ask that question. You can also post in chat. We're going to be monitoring that very closely too, but please feel free with any questions that you have at any time. We've got a great group of experts here, so let's pick their brains.
Yes.
Amy.
So while we're getting to know our panelists, we also want to get to know you. So if you'll please go ahead and post in the chat, let us know what industry you're in, maybe what business questions you have that you know that you brought with you today. But let's go ahead and get to know everybody. So we're going to say hi to Dr. Donnie Williams at the University of Arkansas, Executive Director of Supply Chain Management Research Center. How are you, Donnie? It's good to see you.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We also are very happy to have Nathan Van Schoyck. He is a business development specialist at the United States Postal Service. I will go ahead and put in there that he was early to the meeting. He was on time. He's living his brand.
That's their motto, right, Amy? So he's living it.
Absolutely. We also have a Chef Corey McCain of Bordinos. Hello, Chef Corey. How are you?
I'm great.
And Alisha Cersovsky of Everything Mary. We'll get to know a little bit more about that business. It's fabulous. And Lindsay Ramsey is of the ASB/TDC. She's our marketing specialist, but she's also the prior owner of Kindness and Joy Toys. So she's got a lot of retail supply chain information for us today. So we really just want to go ahead and dive in, saying hello to everybody. Thank you. Hi, Garrett. Yes, fantastic. Let us know what industry you're in. We're going to be monitoring that chat and some of your questions while we have some others that we want to kind of pose. So again, really conversational. If you all as attendees here have some information or questions or solutions, that's what this is all about. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, I'd love to just kind of dive in, and Nathan, being the early bird that you were, we got to have a few minutes to chat, but really, the USPS has been front and center during a lot of this. And I'm just really curious what, from a small business perspective, what you've been seeing in this very transitional time. So first we have a pandemic, and now we're kind of slowly coming out of it. And supply chain for small businesses is a really hot topic, and some of the things that small businesses are struggling with.
Yeah, so what we've kind of seen, and what, like Donnie said earlier, the last mile is something that we really focus on at the post office, trying to make sure, you as a business get your products or whatever it is you're trying to get to customers, advertising, whatever it may be. So what we found, like we were talking earlier, when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of unsureness about what the future was going to hold for small businesses, with, companies not knowing what their future is going to look like. So over the next couple months, we found that there's been a lot of growth in small business, and the amount of customers I've dealt with over the last couple of months have grown to where, I didn't assume. I was nervous. I thought that, they're going to be honest, they go out and find these good businesses, but I didn't have to find anybody. People were coming to us, asking questions, and I was able to help a lot of customers. And mainly I work with a lot of small business, especially in the shipping industry, and helping customers find packaging, using software to help with pricing on shipping, to make things more efficient, streamline things. Working with the software companies to help with inventory control, to where, everything makes it easy so that you can get your product, ship it to the customers. But over the last couple of months, we had the biggest, as far as volume goes, Christmas last year during COVID we've ever had. And that was not expected because of COVID. So it's been great the last couple of months, and the small business I've worked with have just been growing like crazy. So the post office has been doing really well helping small business, and we hope to continue to do that.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And Alisha, I'd really love for you to talk a little bit about Everything Mary. We have a variety of industries kind of represented, and you're kind of in a manufacturing mode. Everything Mary is local to Northwest Arkansas, but you have a really big distribution map that you are hitting. So tell us a little bit about Everything Mary.
Sure, thank you. We design sewing and craft products here in Fayetteville, and then we have a relationship with a factory in China, Ningbo and Yantian both, where we import our products. We ship them over containers over the ocean, which used to take about 21 days, and now it's just very challenging. I think we're right at around 60 days. To get stuff to the port, we go to Long Beach, LA, where right now we have like 21 containers sitting at the ocean waiting to be ported. So that's a daily challenge. And then we warehouse out of California, ship to our customers all over the United States, Walmart and Joann's and Michael's, all those fun craft businesses. So.
I've seen you. I will say that my son asked if you could make some patterns that boys want.
Well, we did have a line of Marvel and license for a while, so I bet we still have some.
Excellent. Well, we'll be happy to hear that. Fantastic. Well, and we wanted to have a variety of industries. So I'd love to hear from Chef Corey about what supply chain looks like for restaurants right now.
It's pretty volatile right now, honestly. I think it probably affects us a little bit less than some of the other fast casual or smaller businesses, simply because we do a lot of the processing and cooking and things here, whereas some of the smaller businesses, for instance, just an example, French fries have been a huge issue for some of the smaller businesses. Mainly with processing plants and stuff that just can't keep up, or not enough trucking or transportation to get it to facilities and things like that. I think supply chain in general is very volatile for the restaurant industry. Most of our things, I wouldn't say most, but a good portion of our things are perishable, and you only have a certain amount of time to get it. And if you don't get it, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges we'll unpack just a little bit. And then Lindsay, you have in the past had Kindness and Joy Toys, which really kind of grew over through the pandemic because you took a lot of things online. And so all of a sudden, supply chain, not just how to get something into your store and on the shelves, but also getting it out to people and shipping and some of those little things what we're trying to get done were a part of your world. And now you are also working for ASB TDC. So you have a bevy of clients that are having some of the challenges that you experience. So tell us a little bit about both of those sides of what you're seeing, what you experienced and what you're seeing now.
That's right. On the ASB TDC side, I just sent Nathan a private message in chat and I was like, so if we have ASB TDC clients who are going online and have questions about shipping, can we reach out to you directly? Because I feel like that is a lot of what we're seeing is, you know, a lot of people popped up websites really fast in the pandemic and they didn't have a lot of the shipping and logistics issues with that really worked out. And so they're costing themselves quite a bit of money because they're not paying attention to the box size and the box packaging and all those last mile things that can really affect profit. So I was excited to see that. And Nathan said, yes, we can call him because that hurdle, I feel like for, our clients can be significant to truly figure all those things out. So that's on the ASB TDC side. And on the Kindness and Joy retail side, I mean, last year was a whirlwind of trying to get ahead of the shortage of goods that we knew it would be happening. And we knew we needed to bulk up our inventory because we grew a lot last year. And if I didn't have the product, I couldn't sell it. So trying to really forecast how long it was going to take for me to get things. Our biggest issue last year was that most of the warehouses that shipped to us, our biggest vendors, were located on the East and the West Coast. And when they shut down and sent everybody home, I mean, what used to take a couple weeks took much longer, months to get inventory. And so that was something we really had to work through last year, kind of controlling our flow of goods and how that fed into our cash flow and all of those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And then I think I'm worried for retail businesses looking into this fourth quarter. I know that many of them that have reached out to me are getting emails from their vendors and suppliers saying that the flow of goods is going to be short and that they need to stock up early. And is there truth to that? And honestly, Alisha is someone I've leaned on and I've called her and I've said, well, how long is it taking you to get a container out of China and what's happening at the port? So trying to just really get some information about how long it's going to take and what the flow of goods will look like.
Fantastic. Well, and I want to kind of bookend us with Donnie, Nathan on the front end and Donnie on the other end. And, you know, there are just so many considerations. Supply chain is kind of like when we used to say sustainability or consultant, like what comes under that is enormous and really coming down. And I don't know, you know, we often think about, you know, logistics and large retailers. And, you know, I know a Walmart article came out very recently about some of the supply chain challenges that are coming down the pike for them. And so, you know, when you are a Main Street business or a small business, or even, you know, in Alisha's case with Everything Mary, you know, national or worldwide trying to ship, what are things looking like? What are some of the changes and the challenges and kind of what do you see on the horizon? And you don't have to answer all of those right now, but
well, you know, I think the primary thing that I've seen over the past year is that what used to be really large corporation problems are now everybody's problems. You can't just say, oh, large corporations are having a problem getting their stock in. Now small businesses are having a problem getting their stock in, even though the inventory lot sizes are not as big, right? But the problem that we really see here is if small businesses can't get their inventory, they go out of business. Whereas corporations can kind of move some of that positioning of inventory around and have more substitution in place, and they can survive that a little bit longer. It's not as forgiving for small businesses. And so I think supply chain, you know, I feel a little bit guilty because as an academic, this has been the most interesting year, particularly supply chain academic. It's been the most interesting year to watch how companies have responded. but just watching how difficult it's been for everyone. I can tell you that large corporations, I'm talking to them, I know forecasting came up earlier. They're just like, we have no idea how to forecast in this environment. It's just like throwing darts in the dark, pin to tail on the donkey is kind of like what forecasting is right now. You're spinning around, everything's spinning around. You don't know where things are going to be at. To Alisha's point and Lindsay's point earlier, lead time. Like, how long is it going to take to get our products from wherever they're coming from? And that could be on the coast in the US, or it could be global. And so it's just a real challenge right now. And I think what I've seen, small businesses have suffered the most in this because they don't typically, inherently, they're small, so they don't have as many resources to look at this. They don't have the experts in-house to really help them navigate and manage this. And so it's just a much greater struggle. There's so much to consider and think about, to the point of cash flow. How much inventory do I hold? How early do I have to order it so that I'm having to stock? Because if I can't satisfy a customer, they're going to go somewhere else. And that hurts the small business more so than it does anyone else. To Nathan's point, we were talking about this earlier, just, the expectations of customers with omnichannel now, ordering online, having it delivered, there's so many implications there. As far, if you're in food, thinking about, well, how do I make sure that that food is safe all the way to, how do I make sure it's still high quality food when they get it, that it's still hot and that it actually tastes good and hasn't been, compromised in any way. So there's so many variables in play right here, and it really is product dependent, business dependent, and how you have to think about that. And so, we can talk about that. I could go on and on, but it's just, for me, it's kind of fun looking at all this. You guys are struggling through it, and I certainly empathize with how difficult that is. But it's certainly a dynamic market right now, no matter what product line you're working with.
Well, and I think one of the industries, Donnie, that we've been talking about has been really hit is the restaurant industry. I mean, they've struggled. They've have to really be fluid throughout this whole process. And Corey, I want to take it back to you because you have been on the front end of problem solving. So I'm going to kind of pick on you a little bit to kind of tell us a little bit about what you've done and what you've been thinking, what's worked and what has not worked. But you even just before our meeting today, before the panel started, you actually got some information and some good advice from Donnie. So that's what these panels are all about, is talking and sharing. But could you go ahead and share your experience as the problem solver?
Well, I got elected the problem solver by more than the powers that be, we'll say. So really it's just rolling with the punches. So we have our broadliners or our distributors that we use for certain products, and we're used to a certain quality. We're our fine dining restaurant. So we've had to adapt to using different products than we're normally used to using. We've had to go with even sometimes higher quality products that cost us more because the middle grade or the products that we've been using have, they just don't exist anymore, or that company has gone out of business, or getting that product to us has become more difficult. Things like taking too long for certain products. If it takes me a month to get something that is perishable in 2 weeks, then I don't get that product. So we've tried to, I guess we've become a little bit more vague in the way we present our food on paper to our customers, so that we're able to substitute in other products from other companies to be able to give the customer what they want, honestly. So I may be rambling here. I can lose my train of thought, but I think a lot of it for us is we've tried to make the best out of a bad situation. Writing menus differently, the way we do our to-goes and delivery and all of the things in the restaurant industry, and especially as a fine dining restaurant, we are not used to. We didn't do delivery. We had pickup, but it was, once or twice a week, we'd have somebody come and pick up food from us. when you're in a fine dining restaurant, it's all about the atmosphere. It's all about the restaurant itself. It's all about the service. And of course the food too, but you're paying a lot more because of the atmosphere and the type of service you're getting. So for us, it's been a very strong learning curve, and me in particular. I took over this position in January of last year, and then COVID hit in March. So it has been a little bit of a learning curve for not only me, but the rest of our team, just trying to navigate how to make it work for us as a small business and to make it profitable so that we can afford to have people here and give them, a 40-hour work week and allow them to live somewhat comfortably during COVID. I think a lot of the supply chain issues that we have had has been things like, just gloves. That's something that the restaurant industry, we use a large amount of gloves. We always have. But whenever COVID hit, gloves have skyrocketed in price. We used to pay $60 a case for gloves. They're currently, I think the last time I checked with our broadliner and a couple other companies, they're up to $250 a case. So a lot of it is, I guess, the supply chain and then the increased cost because the supply chain is so backed up. It just costs more to get product in. Beef, chicken, pork, vegetables, everything has gone up in the last year. We've seen increases on, I would say, 90% of the products that we use. So rolling with the punches for the restaurant and trying to figure out how to use the same products at a more expensive price, but still keep the price point for the customer. It's been very interesting learning how to do that in my first years as an executive chef. I think a lot of it will be, my guess is that it's going to get a little bit harder before it gets better for the food industry. I think a big part of it is just getting those production companies and those distribution companies back to full capacity and back to having the amount of trucks they need, the amount of workers they need, the amount of...
Which is going to take time. Yeah.
This takes time. It really does.
I think, Corey, one of the things that you're really highlighting is just all the different, and Donnie, you mentioned this too, like different industries have different challenges. And one of yours is, we think about food, we think about the freshness and getting it there and getting it to a price point that, that people can afford the food on the plate because you can afford to get it through the door. On the other end, we don't always think about things like the gloves, and because now it was distributed to all businesses. So the accessibility of that was definitely, and one of the things that you just touched on is something that Garrett is bringing up and just across everything. He's just kind of has a question for the group about, are there any signs that the supply chain is going to get better through the year? Corey, you just mentioned the opposite of that, but and specifically on lead times in country transit time. So a couple of things about everybody that we have here. We've got doing journals. So I would imagine, Garrett, that you've got some international international supply challenges. So Alisha, that might be something that you can speak to. We also have somebody in natural pharmaceuticals. So I'd imagine that is definitely also probably has some freshness aspect to it. So again, we'd love to hear from all of you, and you're happy to unmute or just post in the chat here. But tell us a little bit about what everybody's seeing as far as lead times, country transit time. I think Nathan and Donnie, these are very much for you as far as kind of what we see coming down the pike. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do your best.
Yeah, I'll take that. So with us at the post office, we are dealing with the same thing that we've been talking about. With us, we are dealing with COVID just like any other business. And so through Christmas, I know that's kind of was the start of a lot of our backups. We had high volume, like I talked about earlier. Christmas, we had the most volume we've had in years, probably one of the highest volume we had for Christmas in a long time. But we still dealt with COVID issues. We had low manpower in the plants. During Christmas, I actually had to go work the plant. And we talked about some larger customers and what they're trying to do. We just onboarded Walmart in about November. And so that hit through Christmas. And so there was large volumes coming through. And me, I work at the district office, and they were calling me on a Saturday to come help throw mail just because we had people out quarantined on COVID. We didn't have the manpower. So we are dealing with the same issues that any other business is dealing with, as far as getting people back to work, getting people full-time back in the jobs, getting truck drivers back on their normal schedules. But that is getting better. We are getting that fixed and getting people back in line. And then, of course, we had snowstorms that hit us a couple months ago, and you would think that that's over, it's all done. Kind of things to keep in mind. Somebody like Memphis, who houses 40, 50 trucks an hour, was shut down for 3 days. And so then all of a sudden, all those trucks show up at one time. And then, you know what I mean? So it's just getting all that mail worked and processed and those packages back on track and get everything back to square one. Anytime those disasters hit, it just puts a hiccup or a pause and everything. So that does cause issues, but things are getting fixed. We are doing a lot of realignment with the post office, getting things better in line to where, information's going more smoothly from one department to the next. We can communicate with everybody a little better. So I do think, and I've been told, I don't deal with transportation specifically, but I have been told that a lot of these delays that you see for your last mile stuff, that on our end, as far as, we deal with 70 pounds or less, so we're not dealing with a lot of your bulk orders and whatnot, but a lot of your last mile logistics should be smoothed out here in a couple of weeks. It should be back to, where it should be. Internationally, that's a whole nother ball game there, because now you're dealing with our transportation service as well as other countries' transportation service and what they're looking like with COVID. So that is a tough question to answer. I know on our end, we can say we're going to do our best to get it to that other country on time. And from there, it goes into somebody else's hands. So that's a hard question when it comes to international to really speak on that as far as giving answers. But yes, as far as us internally, the post office, we are doing everything we can to get things back on track and back where it needs to be. A lot of customers are seeing everything back on track. It really depends on where your package or your shipments are going, because that also plays an issue depending on what part of the country. So things are getting back to where they should be, and I don't think it should be much longer to where we get back in square one. Donnie or somebody else may have other thoughts, but that's kind of what I've been told internally and what's going on with us. Yeah, Donnie, is there anything at that 30,000 foot level?
Yeah, well, probably, Nathan, I think what you're talking about, you're looking at that last mile and kind of seeing what's happening there. And, the things I'm reading and the trends I'm watching tells me it's going to get worse through the end of the year. And I think there's a myriad of factors that are in play there, right? And so when we think about global supply chains, if you're doing business internationally, we still got factories that are not up to their normal production levels pre-COVID right now. And that's just a reality. And so that's causing constraints everywhere, but demand is increasing. And so if you looked at transportation metrics, even over the past year, you've seen capacity's gone down. We have less drivers on the road, the demand's gone up. And if you think about transportation, different segments, so I'm thinking about, ocean transportation coming over, but then you get to the port, and we've seen just the quagmire that the LA Long Beach ports have been right now. I think the last number I saw, there were 40 ships sitting off the coast trying to get in. But the reason they can't unload is because port workers have COVID but you don't have as many there. So all of a sudden it's a huge bottleneck. And so what normally would take 2 or 3 days to get out of the port is taking 2 weeks to get out of the port. And so it is what it is right now as far as that is concerned. But then you've got on the end of the supply chain, to Nathan's point, that last mile. Well, the demand for last mile delivery has skyrocketed in the past year. And so, we didn't have that much capacity for that. And so capacity issues are everywhere across the supply chain. And what we're seeing is, we think about lead times in general, but now we're seeing the effects, long-term effects of a disruption. and how long lasting that can actually be. And everyone I'm reading and the people that are much smarter than me in all of this space are saying, hey, this is going to keep going at least until the beginning of next year. And so I don't see a relief in that per se. I just see what the relief is going to be is that we've adjusted to it. Our expectations have changed a little bit, but consumers, and all of us are consumers as well, we still want things in a different way, but we're a little bit more forgiving because we just kind of understand the whole global supply chain is disrupted right now. I mean, with the Suez Canal, with everything that happened in Texas, last month, this caused disruptions everywhere. It's not just in those locations. I mean, the Suez Canal, we think that was a European problem, but we have a lot of goods that flow through the canal that still make their way to the US. And so you just kind of see this everywhere, and I think it's just going to continue. The freight logistics companies, the second question there, I can't really, it would be poor of me to recommend any particular companies, but I would say that there are companies that are, I think for small business owners, lean into the experts that do this on a day in and day out basis. Find those freight forwarders, find those brokers that work in this space like Nathan and others that are executing right now and try to get help there. And I think sometimes small business owners kind of sit in the dark and they don't really know what to do, but reach out to those people that this is what they do day in and day out and can really give you, because I think what we really lack is information and accurate information. And if we can get a hold of that, then we can make better plans moving forward.
That's absolutely true. And Alisha, and you have a question here in the chat too, which is great. I love that.
I was trying to catch up on that.
And business perspective. So when we're talking about kind of what it is that you're seeing in lead times and we also have that question about, better freight. And so then you asked a question to Donnie, which was like, what about rail? Like what everybody is kind of scrambling to find the different avenues. And so I guess if you would kind of let us know what you're experiencing from your perspective, and then definitely bat that over to Donnie to ask him that specifically.
Okay, thank you. Just an example from this week, we have 11 containers that need to leave China, and China has said our factory, even though they've ordered them in advance, they were only given 4. So we have to prioritize which product is most important to get on the water. And over, we're being told it's an equipment shortage, that the containers are not returning from the US. And so we're like, well, the US, we need stuff. So, and they keep saying the holdup is rail. And I talked to C.H. Robinson, who's a freight forwarder, yesterday, and they said right now at Long Beach, there's enough containers to fill 28 full trains. And it's just sitting there. And so they said, until we can get those delivered and get the empty ones returned and get the empty ones back to China, we cannot have enough equipment to then send more over. And it just seems like a big cog in the pipeline. And I don't know if there's a shortage of truck drivers in the US. It seems like our stores are empty and there's a demand for the product. So I just don't understand why we can't get it.
Well, that's $1 million question, right? And so everybody's trying to figure that out. And it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, but it does in other ways. So if you think about it, what people are generally kind of responding to, so we have this thing called bullwhip effect. And it is where if I have any kind of fluctuation in demand, people react to that and try to game the system, right? And so, and what that means is I may order more because I'm trying to figure out I need inventory now, but these companies can only produce so much. So they have a capacity limitation. And so the companies that I've been listening to and talking to is that's a real big issue for them, is what is real capacity? And how do I manage that capacity? If I know that my lead times have tripled, or in some case are even longer than that, then I'm going to order more. Well, if everybody's doing that, now the manufacturer's like, we can't do this, we can't produce this. But as far as rail is concerned, now think about the systemic effects, right? So if all of a sudden I'm out of trucking capacity and I can't move people because truck drivers are sick or they're getting off the road, many truck drivers just retired when all of this hit. And there's a lot of factors around that with ELDs, with hours of service rules that came into play. And we saw some of those relaxed at the beginning of COVID so that we could get essential goods out to people. But, you know, we transfer a lot of that freight over to rail where we can, where it makes sense. Well, now that capacity is full. And so I can't get that out. But then I can't move it back and forth to the ships because my longshoremen are no longer working, or my port workers are sick and they can't get out. So it's these kind of bottleneck points that are happening, and we just can't get them through. And I think that's just an ongoing challenge that we're going to continue to see until the inventory kind of levels out, you know, probably in the next 6 months, I would say. Again, I'm a terrible forecaster, and what we teach our students is that every time you forecast is wrong, right? And so we know that inherently, but it really is all the myriad factors. There are information. So a couple of things that I track, Lindsay asked this, is the Wall Street Journal puts out a daily logistics report. And I actually think it's really good. It kind of gives you a good idea. It's free. It'll come to your inbox. There's another one that if I sent you my link, I'd get some free gear out of it, but called the Morning Brew. I follow that every morning. If it kind of gives you a big picture of what's happening in the world. If you follow, there's a lot of supply chain news organizations. I think Supply Chain Dive is a good one. And there's others. I'll send them to you guys, and then you can distribute them out to the attendees that I follow pretty closely, just to kind of get a sense of what's happening in the markets from a macro perspective. But yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer for that. Rail is trying to figure out as well. And I will say, if I was going to ask questions about rail locally in Northwest Arkansas, I'd talk to JB Hunt, because 50% of their revenue comes from intermodal freight, and they're the experts in this space. And so that's who I would talk to and kind of figure out, hey, can you give me any details on what I can expect moving forward? There are others in play that deal with rail, but that's primarily what they do and have a competitive advantage there. I don't generally like to talk about specific companies, but in this particular case with rail, JB Hunt's the best.
Well, if you could send us those links, those tips that you just gave, that would be great, because I think that's, you know, one of the things that we're all trying to do is we don't all have a Donnie sitting at our table at home. We wish we did, but we don't. So, you know, what's the next best thing? We really need to figure out how to get the most accurate, quickest information and the reliable information. You know, Garrett was talking about with China and stuff. I mean, we need to know ahead of time what's going on so these small businesses can really forecast for themselves.
That's a question I was going to kind of ask or bring up that conversation. Like, I know specifically that Garrett at Duncan and Stone, and Alisha too, or Kindness and Joy, they're trying to forecast and make these decisions based on things that are, you know, for a retail business. I mean, Garrett, they have I'm speaking for you a little bit here, Garrett. They have their own website that they're selling direct to consumer, but they also are selling through wholesalers who are then doing direct to consumer. And so the big question is, you know, right now, like, how soon do I need to bring that in? And I think Garrett's question about, is it going to get any better? And I think would help me with my clients too. You know, cash flow is an issue, but this doesn't seem like it's a phantom problem. Like, it seems like it's going to be a real problem. Like, getting goods towards the end of the year may not be reliable at all. And so does it seem to all the panel, does it seem reasonable for, as I'm consulting clients, or I still am in contact with the Kindness and Joy staff, you know, we're getting emails that we need to bulk up. And it sounds like that's a strategy that may need to be in place for 2021. Donnie, you're shaking your head, but any other,
Well, and I would just say that, small business owners certainly have to do that because large companies are doing that. And so if you're thinking about capacity of the manufacturers, where they're at, and you think about where you're at as a small business on the totem pole, so to speak, so they're going to allocate their inventory to their different customers. And so in this time, and we've seen large companies do this over and over, is that you know, we always talk about supply chain as being a relationship business. And as much as we want it to be kind of, hey, it's inventory, it's lead times, and it's all these things, is that you can't function in supply chain without close relationships. And part of that is figuring out who are my most strategic partners. And part of this too is figuring out your core products. And so all of us have A, B, C products, right? And so what are those A products that you survive on as a business? And that is the relationships that we recommend. Hey, tap into those relationships up your supply chain and make sure that you're working ahead of time to mitigate any risk that you may have. And if you're not categorizing your inventory like that right now, because in most cases, you could say 20% of your revenue, 80% of your revenue is probably coming from about 20% of your products, right? And so
Absolutely.
Those are the ones that you want to really get way ahead of and strengthen those relationships and do whatever you've got to do to make sure you get those products in, because customers will be forgiving for the things that, hey, I just don't sell a lot of this, and so I'm not going to give as much attention to this. But the things that they come to you for your core, give all your energy to that.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
We're talking a little bit about, these are, ordering ahead, shelf stable products, for lack of a better term. And so what does it look like in the fresh industry where, there's a little bit more of a time sensitivity and some of those things, Corey? And one of the things that I think I'm really recognizing is just and it was through the entire pandemic, the constant adaptability, always paying attention, but also, constantly adapting to whatever that climate is. And you mentioned that before, Corey. And so I'm just curious what your needs are, what your questions are from a needing some of those fresh products as well. I mean, you do have some things like gloves that you need on a regular basis, but fresh. And you very recently kind of explored a creative solution to some of that, to get some of those bigger shipments in by working with other restaurants. But tell us a little bit about what that looks like from a fresh industry, or what questions you have about that.
I think, I guess as far as the fresh industry, like you said, we work with perishable items, and a lot of perishable items. So when the supply chain does get backed up and we have that bottleneck, sometimes there's just things we can't get anymore. So trying to be creative throughout that process of, there are some small businesses that we order from that use freight liners to get that product to us. And then that freight liner can't actually get that to us, or the small business has shut down for a couple of weeks and they're backed up on their side of things. I think my biggest question is, when is it all going to be back to normal, right? I think that's everybody's question. But I don't think that what we had pre-COVID is ever really going to happen again, because we've all learned new things. We've all had to roll with the punches throughout COVID and these supply chain issues. And I think we're all just going to be a little gun shy for a while. We're all going to be doing the ordering extra things, even if we don't need it. We're all going to have an extra supply of toilet paper. We're all going to have those extra products. And some of that being specifically for small businesses, that's not necessarily something we can afford. That's something that we have to kind of allocate a percentage of our profits to be able to get that product in for something that may be down the line a couple of months or 3 months, or we're not real sure how it's going to look, so we have to just go day by day. As far as the perishable side of things, fortunately, we work with a really good company that kind of our supplier keeps us really in the loop on where they're at as far as their distribution. They keep us. I get a email probably every third or fourth day from my contact that gives us just a broad lined idea of what beef prices, chicken, all of the manufactured products, any of the dry goods that we use, and how and where and when it's going to get to us. That's not always real, tangible from them. And sometimes it's completely off. You know, they try as hard as they can to get it right, but there's so many facets that it's very hard to actually nail down a specific timeline. So I think as far as perishables go, we haven't had huge issues with not getting product in. It's been more of an issue of that product being a lot more expensive. So with it being that we are a small company, when those products get more expensive, our profitability goes down. Unless we pass that on to the consumer, which we have in certain rights to add 50 cents here to a menu item or here and there. But I think that our biggest issue with the perishables is just the fact that everything's getting more and more and more expensive. And the customer they don't know about that side of things. So it's hard to say, well, this now costs this amount, when they don't understand why it costs that amount. So it's been a learning curve on how to price things on our menu according to what people expect to pay, while still being profitable with more expensive products. Even though it's the same exact product, we have to kind of play around, experiment with ways to do things in a new way that can still keep us profitable. Experimentation
is huge right now.
It is. Well, and Alisha, so we declared Corey the project or the problem solver. I'm going to declare you the creative director with what you do. You live in that space all the time. So I know you have come up with some creative ideas since this whole mess started last spring. Can you share any ideas with us?
Any adaptations and twists and turns and pivots that you all have had to do?
Yeah. Flexibility.
Well, I can try. I think the main adaptation we've made is just increasing lead time. Like I said before, it used to take 21 days from the time something would leave China to the time, like 14 days to get to port, and we would allow a good week to go through customs and get to the warehouse to check it in, and we could ship it out. And now it's closer to 60, 70 days sometimes. And so we're just having to really plan ahead, which means we're already looking at Q4. What do we need to bring in? Our bigger challenges, I think, are with our customers, because they're not wanting to take price increases, even though freight has quadrupled since last year. And I would love to know where the ceiling is for that. We've never seen prices this high for freight, and it seems we just got a rate for May 1st, and it's even higher. And so every time we think it can't get any higher, it just does. And so we're just trying to be really careful and ride it out and building inventory, even though it's not really building. We're requesting it to be made earlier and asking it to ship earlier, but it really isn't shipping any earlier. And we really have to prioritize and choose what we bring over. I loved your 80-20 point, because I feel like we've looked at that a lot. Which items are most profitable? Even this morning, when we found out we had 5 containers of 11 that would be leaving port, we went through, okay, which items are most profitable? Those are the ones we're going to ship. And which customers are most important to us, which I really hate that we're having to do that. But right now we don't have a choice. So
I would love to, because both of you brought that up about communicating to customers and the price changes. And Lindsay, I'm going to put you on the spot here because you're a resident marketing expert. And communication to customers is so important. And so, kind of how do we communicate to customers about some of the price increases that are happening? What does the public already know? And, when you say the most profitable, is it also the most in demand? That's kind of the other question is, are we prioritizing, the right thing in that? So Lindsay, do you have any just kind of thoughts on that? Because I think that it's something that a lot of people are probably having to face.
Well, I say to our clients a lot to over communicate, and a lot of you, which I know Garrett and Alisha both sell direct to consumer, but their primary income at this point may be going through someone else. And so I think whether you're communicating to your wholesale buyer or to your consumer, I think you just have to be open and upfront about communicating that like, and as long and in front as you can. Like, there are going to be price increases because, and detailing that. I know as a wholesale buyer, I always wanted to hear the why behind that price increase. I mean, it wasn't very long ago that we were talking about tariffs instead of COVID, right? And so there were price increases because of that. And so I think when we can plan and we can know those things, it's important. So I would just say over communicate to your client who's buying, or to your customer, your end user, either way.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I saw Garrett's,
yeah.
Or go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think Scott's question kind of piggybacks on that about naturally increasing. And then, yes, Garrett, I would love for you to expand on that. Costs have naturally increased in the last year. How have you seen supplier payment terms impacted, if any, over the same time? So I think that, there's communicating to customers, but then there's also having that communication with suppliers and payment terms and things like that. Does anybody have any insight into that side of things with the suppliers?
I mean, we saw terms go away in some instances, like they just pulled them completely. Vendors that I had long-standing relationships with and would have like net 90 or even net 120. When COVID hit, they just pulled those things, like they weren't an option anymore. And I don't know kind of where that is now, because I'm not in that same vein. But we saw a lot of that.
Anybody else? Alisha?
Yeah, well, I will say one of our customers went from 65 days where we ship it to them and they pay us 65 days later. We're on the other side, and they came out and said, it's going to be 180 days. Like, you don't have a choice. And in looking into it, I know Macy's and Kohl's and a lot of other retailers. I recently read an article on the Wall Street Journal that said that, I don't know, over 100 companies like Macy's and Kohl's, those are just the two they mentioned, have done that, and how it's squeezing small businesses. And so, yeah, it's happening and it's hard, but not all of them, I would say.
Love for, I'm having a weird echo.
Garrett, we would love, since your little buddy is asleep now, he was so cute to watch, but can you expand on your question?
For sure. Garrett, I really wanted to give him a shout out. I'm sad he's gone. I was going to say his name. He would have thought that was so fun.
Oh, I know.
Oh, shoot.
I know. That's our youngest. He just got home from school. Yeah, it's not necessarily tied directly to supply chain. I don't think so. Nobody may know this specific question, but it's related to it. Essentially, we produce everything overseas in China today. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, primarily cost. And so, it's even as for our company starting to look at, are there other countries we should look at moving our manufacturing? We're getting stuff quoted in the US to see as well. So I'm just thinking globally, is there manufacturing movement that plays into some of this? And, should we continue down that path, or just try to buy earlier and just stick with our partners, which we love and we don't really want to move, but we're considering that too.
I'll take a stab at this. We've been watching these trends, and there's actually a organization, I can't remember the exact name. I'll look it up here in just a minute, but it's like the Reshoring Institute, I think it's called. And looking at this, moving manufacturing is difficult, primarily because of talent, scale, resources, so many things in it. And I think a lot of companies are talking about, hey, we're going to move our manufacturing in response to a lot of the political environment that's going on. And certainly you've seen the Biden administration come out with a supply chain initiative talking about providing incentives for companies to move manufacturing of essential goods in specific industries back. It's something that in the research center here, we're going to be looking at over the next year, some of the policy implications and how it's going to impact supply chains. But I think the reality of it is that without a talent base, without the resources, China certainly has a huge competitive advantage on that right now. However, I was talking with a PPE company that was trying to get goods out of China at the beginning of the pandemic. Their manufacturer that they had typically worked with, I think some of the issues that we see in China is that while a manufacturer can meet all the requirements of the country that they're exporting to out of China, and so it's like the US, we have certain regulations they have to meet, they may not have to meet the regulations that are in China. And this particular company was doing gowns and masks and things like that. And they said, well, fine, we'll move our production to a manufacturer in Spain that they had a relationship with. The problem is that the raw materials for the gowns, the fabrics and the things like that, 80% of that in the world comes through China. so it was just like, okay, we tried to move, but we couldn't because they have the monopoly just about on the actual raw materials that we need here in the production of that. And so that's not, while I think you're going to see some of that move to other Asian companies like Vietnam, we've heard a lot about that. We've heard about Korea and some various places like that. It's not going to be fast. I think that's going to be a very slow, and there's going to have to be a lot of incentives put behind that, and a lot of geopolitical things that are going on that are going to have to drive that. That can certainly happen within the next 5 to 10 years, but short term, I just don't see anything like that really happening at the magnitude that it would really impact your businesses that much. What I would say, and we've said this quite a bit in our years, and this is harder for small businesses to do, is that in a risk planning strategy, and I think every small business should be thinking about risk in terms of, where are my supplies coming from? Because if they dry up at any point or they're disrupted and I can't get them, then I don't have anything to sell to consumers. And so it makes sense to be, again, thinking about, okay, I've got A supplier for my core products, but who is B supplier? Like who can I go to if something happens with A supplier and I can't get goods out of China, or just the lead time gets so long that I'll be out of business before I can get my goods. And I think this is where a lot of companies, the single sourcing idea is a bad idea. And we've seen a lot of companies do that. And it's harder for small businesses because, again, there's only so much cash flow you want to tie up in inventory. And so you want to try to get that the scale as much as possible so you can take advantage of economies of scale, buy in bulk and get lower prices. But in some cases, you can actually pigeonhole yourself into a bad situation there. And so really coming up with a risk management plan on how to think about that, I would really spend some time strategically thinking about where you're sourcing from.
I love that idea of risk management plan. And I love for, just kind of as we're closing out, for everybody to use that example of Donnie, be like, okay, so everything is bad, but here's a good note to end on. Chris always reminds me, like, what's the good part about what we're talking about here? Maybe everybody give kind of a little bit of a tip on what you feel like is something solid that that you either wish that you already knew, or that you are going to be doing, or that you feel like would be a great thing that you wanted to give as a tip on how to get through this phase of business and adapting on a regular basis. Nathan, I'm going to start with you, because I think that, again, you're in that last mile space. And so if there was something that you wish all of your clients knew, what do you think that would be?
You put me on the spot.
I did.
Yes. So it just depends. I mean, it depends on how far along you are with your shipping and your small business, and kind of how much you're actually shipping to customers. Because I talk to customers every day, and some are just starting right now and doing 10 packages a week and kind of getting their feet wet. Some are doing 100 packages a day and or they're needing more pickups and logistic type stuff. But what I would recommend for small businesses is get to know your post office. I mean, you would be surprised how many times your local carrier will go above and beyond if they know what you're doing. I work with people all the time, and they say, look, I'm doing 50 packages a day. I can't fit them in my vehicle and drive to the post office. It's 20 minutes away. And when I called the office, the carrier had no clue that there was a business out of that person's home or their office. They didn't know they were shipping. And so after they make contact, every day they back the vehicle up and they give them sacks, and we give you free stuff to load up all your products so that we can just take them, put them in the vehicle, and send them on. You know, there's tons of software that will help lower your shipping costs and sync things. So there's a lot of information for small businesses that either they haven't asked or haven't raised their hand and said, hey, I need some help with my shipping, or like we talked about, I'm available to call me and I can work with you and answer any questions, or, you know, so because I've dealt with a lot of small businesses who do this for a year and they blanket charge a customer $5 for postage. And when they look, all their postage payments are $8, $9, and they're losing $3, $4 a pop. And
hey, Nathan, will you come do a whole webinar on that for us?
Yeah, Nathan's
and we'll just talk about that because we have some clients who could really use it.
Yeah, Nathan's tip is
we can go over that.
Call me.
Yeah, give me a call, because I mean I've dealt with customers and a year into it, they're like, man, I'm just constantly losing money in shipping, and if it keeps like this, I can't keep my business afloat because I can't make any money. And so giving them, I mean, all of our rates are published, and I'm sure any other shipping company, the rates are published. And it's just learning those rates and learning how to navigate those rates to one, either make money on shipping or at least equal your cost. And so those are available. You know, I'm available. I can show you where to go. But like I said, if you are shipping stuff, especially through us, let your office know, let your carrier know, because they will a lot of times go above and beyond to help you out and pick your stuff up and get you materials like we talked about, free boxes or whatever it may need. So that's, you know, after talking to a lot of people and listening to the frustration after 6 months of doing this, and then they realize all this is available, and they had no clue. So, you know, like I said, yeah, I posted my information. Yeah, and they posted again right there. Give me a call, shoot me an email, any questions you have. I can be a contact, even if, you know, I don't deal with like looking for stuff, but if you've got an issue with a customer and they're, you know, upset because something's not moving, you know, email me. I'll do what I can to get it to the right person or get you an answer. But yeah, just, you know, try to use what's available for you. I guess that's my biggest tip, you know, and I know that's not always easy. It's easier said than done sometimes, but.
That's great. Alisha, what is one takeaway you'd love everybody to have?
Well, I can't emphasize enough how important we've learned that supply chain is, and understanding and learning to adapt accordingly to things that are out of our control. Lead time has been huge for us. And so that's the one thing, lead time and building up inventory, and understanding that you don't have a business if you don't have inventory. So you've got to understand how to get it to your warehouse and get it to your customer in time, or else they'll drop you. So yeah, that's the one thing I would say.
Love it. How about you? You there?
Did you say me? It cut out. I will go.
Sorry,
Lindsay's
Corey.
Going.
Yeah, Lindsay.
Okay. Lindsay's going. Here we go. I would say like plan ahead. It's April, and if you are a vendor or if your business is Christmas fourth quarter focused, like you cannot put this off until June. Like you've got to make some decisions now. And if you need cash to go buy the inventory, figure out how to go get it. Because I just think that Donnie really reiterated that this is not some like made up problem, that it is really going to be an impact in 2021.
Great. And Corey, how about you all? What about from your perspective?
I think what I've learned is not being afraid of plan B and C and D and E and F and all the way to Z, because you're going to get there eventually. I think also from a perspective of a restaurant in general is going back to what I believe it was Donnie was talking about, is not just using a single source point for your products. I think it's always good to have that backup. It may not be the same exact thing that you were using before, but being able to have that product and adapt it to the way you need it to be for the customer is pretty important. It's specifically in the restaurant industry. I don't know how that works for the rest of you, but for us, it's pretty important to be able to have that secondary option, to be able to either pit them against each other to work on pricing, or to get the product if one of them is out. So yeah, I'd say that having multiple sources for the things that you need is pretty important in the supply chain for restaurants these days.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. I know we're running a little bit over on time, so I just want to, we've popped up our screen. Obviously we have people like Lindsay on our staff, and we're bringing you everyone. So thank you again for being here. And again, you will, as an attendee of the conversation, we will send you all of these links. So hopefully you are taking note of everything that's going on in the chat, and you'll be emailed, or you can find the recording on the website. And Chris will just tell us where else to find us.
Great. Well, you can find us at a listing of our workshops at sbtdc.uark.edu. And you can also use the QR code that's right there on your screen for more notifications. And we would also love for you to become a client. We can help you with just about any of your needs as a small business. We're also posted on social media, so please connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And this has been so great. It is absolutely a pain point of our small businesses. What it sounds like, it's going to continue to be a pain point. And so we really appreciate all of you helping us out and answering all these questions. And we hope to see the rest of you soon.
Yes, we'll do a workshop in June, so keep an eye out for that. Yep. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.